People who were the reasons for certain rules. What is your story? I started a witch coven at my Catholic school in 1996 and got all the occult books pulled from the school's library shelves and banned. IDK what they thought was going to happen, giving a bunch of teenagers access to actual books of spells and pictures of half-naked practitioners doing rituals. I guess they thought we'd all just laugh at the stupid occultists having all that fun we weren't allowed to have and then go back to church. A couple years ago at summer camp, me, my friend and 10 other kids all loaded into an elevator in the main building. We're about 2 stories up when one of the boys says, "Alright, on the count of 3. We all jump, and because we're all stupid teenagers no one sees a problem with this. And surprisingly, the elevator gets stuck. The same boy who suggested jumping in the first place gets his second good idea of the day and tries to pry the doors open, only to find the second pair of doors all elevators have, but for whatever reason no one knew about. Everyone loses it. Everyone screams. Kids are freaking out because they think we're about to plummet to the ground. A girl in a corner is having a panic attack. People are crying and trying to say goodbye to their parents over the phone. Some kid yells about how we're gonna run out of oxygen. For whatever reason, the boy behind all this decides to take his shirt off. This continues for 2 hours until firemen are able to wrench open the doors and get us all out, at which point we discover we were 2 inches above the ground the whole time. And that's how my summer camp got very strict rules about no jumping in the elevators, and the story about the elusive elevator crew they mention in the introduction every year but never actually explain. I'm sure I am not the sole person responsible, but I'm part of the reason all those baggage scales at airport stations have luggage only, do not stand on scale signs on them. Like some dumb sign is gonna stop me. Not a rule per se, but I was the reason for a forum getting closed down and the mods essentially telling us all to post in another forum. When I was about 14, I joined this forum and made friends with a couple other kids on it, all of us ranging from 12-15. One night all of us were online at once and we essentially posted everywhere, eventually going super off topic. Not on purpose, we were all just silly kids, and just in general being cringy and annoying. The next morning 3/4 of our posts were deleted and the mods said they were shutting down the forum. It's been 11 years and I still feel a little bad for them, though they are doing well for themselves today. Because of me, my old primary school eliminated their dated, ugly butt gym uniforms and started letting kids bring athletic gear of their choosing. It wasn't because of anything I did on purpose. I just hit puberty really early and, to be frank, the sight of an 8-year-old with the body of a small adult crammed into what looked like a too small Hooters uniform made the teachers really uncomfortable. I am the reason students cannot ask the band director for chalk, seeing as how I ate it upon receiving it. This was my stated intent, but they believed it to be in jest. Well, you did ingest it. The school has a rule that said only closed-toe showmen allowed, so I wore my Vibrams 5 fingers. One of the teachers tried to call me out for not having closed-toe shoes, so I said, "But mom, as you can clearly see, all of my toes are enclosed, each and every one. I have verifiably closed toes." She said that was not what the administration had intended, that they only wanted tennis shoes. I showed her exactly how it was written in the handbook, and said that if they had meant only tennis shoes then they should have written that. By the law, I had done nothing wrong. Next year, a specific ruling that banned Vibrams and non-tennis shoes. Ever see the not for human consumption warning on a case of urinal cakes? Not me, but you know someone tried to eat one. Well, it says cake. Urinal cake. Not really a rule for all of us, but just for my parents. I have a ridiculous memory that was the bane of my parents' existence for my childhood years. I remember every promise my parents make me, especially if it's something I really want. The best example was Disney World. The old Disney Channel used to show parts of Epcot and Disney World and I begged my parents for I don't know how long if we could go. My dad promised me that when I was 7 and my sister was 5, we could go to Disney World. Apparently the moment my sister blew out the candles on her 5th birthday cake, I screamed that we were going to Disney World, and sure enough that October we did. The most recent promise is my mom completely forgot she offered to pay for a puppy for my graduation like she did for one of my other sisters. The look on my stepdad's face when I reminded her was priceless. No one in my house is allowed to eat peanut butter spoons cause when I was 5 I almost choked to death. Hiding under the table cramming freaking peanut butter down my throat till I could barely swallow or move my jaw. It's been 12 years since then, and my dad has never forgotten and all my younger siblings have never had a peanut butter spoon in their whole lives. I'm gonna sneak in the kitchen tonight and have me one. My third high school. They now have special security staff just to escort problem kids to class and check the bus stop. They sucked at their job, though. I worked in the attendance office instead of having a homeroom class, so the whole office would see I was at school. I started by just putting in excuse notes for myself being 5 minutes late for every class, since attendance was taken then and sent in right away so no corrections. Eventually I just stopped caring and changed my mom's number in my file so she wouldn't get the call. Much easier. I didn't feel the need to show up for classes to learn things I already knew. I'd just show up for tests since they were like 80% of the grade, anyways. Rules for intermediate league lacrosse in the state of Idaho were changed because of me. They are equal contact now instead of full contact, which means you can't actually hit somebody. You have to move up to them and just kind of stand there and let them bump into you. It was poorly explained. Anyway, point is, I hit a kid so hard he bled out of his ears. Freshman year of high school, not old enough for the high school team. We're playing a game. I'm a left defender. This poor freaking kid. He rushes the point defender, jukes him, and I see exactly where this kid is going to come out of his spin. This was his mistake, his downfall, not keeping a good eye on the situation as a whole. I move into position and post, feet planted, gloves together on the stick. I'm in a very solid horse stance, and have been practicing martial arts for a decade at this point. He comes out of his spin and I just lay him the frick out. 2 fists, dead center of mass. Coming from nearly a full sprint to flying through the air in the opposite direction to give you an idea of how hard the impact must have been. The stick is gone. The ball is being recovered by another defender. I knocked this kid's helmet off. He flew a good 5 yards before he hit the ground. Everybody agreed. It was a clean, legal hit. Everyone also agreed 5 minutes in the penalty box. There was no foul called, just penalty box. He doesn't make it to the second half of the game. He's sidelined completely, but he feels so bad after that hit. He just wants to go home and call it a day. But on the way there, his eyes roll back into his head, and he starts bleeding out of his ears. Thus, rule change. When I was about 3 my mom took me to the mall to take photos with Santa and I managed to pull his fake beard off. Now the Santas at my local mall have to have real beards. So, in my high school good students had the option to go to CASA, Center of Advanced Studies of the Arts, for our last 2 periods. 7 schools were involved in this. Out of those schools, ours was the only one that didn't have the option for us to take only 1 class there, leaving the other hour free. For my second year there, my friend and I decided to get a slip to see if we could get our 7th hour removed so we could go home early. We read through it, and at the end of the form it asked for our counselor's name, not signature. So, we wrote it down and were able to drop our classes. Next semester when report cards came out, our school found out we only had 5 classes instead of 6 so we were called to the office. We told them since they didn't ask for a signature, we didn't forge anything. We also claimed to not know that we couldn't drop classes at CASA. They let us off with a warning and made us take another class halfway into the year. They made the forms much more difficult to fill out the next year and they had to go through the main school's counselors for approval. Leaving school an hour early for those few months was totally worth it. Not me, but my brother used to frequent a Mongolian BBQ restaurant. The kind where you put all the ingredients in a bowl yourself and then they cook it on a giant griddle or whatever it is. And that sucker was an artist with how well he could stack his ingredients in a bowl. They had set prices. The adult bowl was like $8 or the kids bowl, which was like $6. And he would get the adult bowl and stack noodles about 8 inches over the top of the bowl. He could get about 3 meals out of his bowl and it only cost $8. He did this about 3 times a week and he only finally had enough of him getting away with all that food for so cheap a price. Now they charge you extra, depending on how much you fill the bowl. I was in on that noodle stacking action for a long time as well, but he was the master at it. It was fun while it lasted. I climbed on the playground at McDonald's and encouraged others to do so. 10 kids stuck for an hour later. They all had signs saying don't climb on the outside or something similar. After 24 hours straight at work a couple times with no problem, they limited us to 16 hours per shift. You know that rule in school, the first one about keeping your hands and feet to yourself. I sharpened my pencil and stabbed my bully right in the middle of his back. They then added, and all objects. In elementary school, the teacher would often catch me playing online flash games instead of working on the computer like everyone else. The layout was like the shape of a C, where the C is the walk path, so the good spots were usually the spots that the teacher couldn't see you not doing work. Usually if you come after school you'd be allowed to play online stuff like Pop Tropica or Moshi Monsters. On one particular day, during school, she got so upset with me for not doing work like I was supposed to do that she just straight up made a rule banning games on the computers. I was hated by my friends for like a month. When I was in preschool, I was curious, to put it nicely. The teachers called me a troublemaker, so my teacher would give out these small Jello cups if we were good. They were the equivalent of one bite of Jello and she would keep them in the fridge in the classroom. Well, I was never good by her standards, so I never got Jello cups. One day, I took 3 of them from the fridge and put them in my pocket. My mom came and picked me up, and as I was walking with her to the car, I pulled them out of my pocket. My mom asked what I did today to get all of them, knowing that I never got them before. I flat out told her that I took them. She made me go back inside and give them back. Now they have locks on the fridges. The teacher also lowered her standards and I started to get Jello cups for smaller things like cleaning up my toys and holding the door at playtime. So in middle school we played a game in math club called Krypton. Basically you'd be given 6 numbers, and you'd have to perform math operations on the first 5 to get to the 6th. For example, if you had 2, 4, 3, 5, and 10 and the 6th number was 1, you could get there by doing 10/5, 2 and 4 3. The teacher would write the first 5 numbers on the board, and then she'd write the 6th one, and whoever got a solution would get a point. The problem was, I have always been good at doing math in my head, so I would start coming up with a few paths I could take as she was writing the 5 numbers on the board. It ended up happening that the teacher would write the 6th number on the board and I would have already come up with the answer and immediately give the answer and get the point. I did it so often that the teacher ended up changing the way she presented the numbers, so she would only give the first 4 and then the last 2, so I wouldn't be able to do the math as quickly. Yes, I was that big a nerd. Senior year of high school, I'm in this class called Outdoor Adventures. You learn ecology and how to camp and a few survival skills. The main reason everyone takes the class though, camping field trip near the end of winter. All the OA classes would go to a large, remote wilderness reserve and camp for around a week. This was the highlight of the class. So this camping trip rolls around. First day in, everyone's at their campsites, having fun. I decide to go cut some firewood. Now, I grew up in the Scouts, so this isn't my first time using a hatchet, but still accidents happen and I miss the wood, cutting my finger open. Adults are radioed, I get bandaged up, and have to spend the rest of the trip, 6 days, with a wad of gauze and tape around my middle finger. 2 years later, I'm hanging out with a younger friend that was at the time a senior at that same high school. He's talking about how when he went on the trip, they were only allowed to bring a camp saw with to cut firewood because some kid cut a finger off with an axe on the first day of the trip. I showed him my scar, and he laughed and said F you, griping about how difficult it was to cut wood with a saw. I wonder if the story has now evolved to me cutting my whole hand off. More of a personal rule. I don't like to make people cocktails at my house anymore. No, I'm not spiking them with some shady crap. People have gotten way too drunk off of them and then blame me. Friend's girlfriend accused me of foul play, so those who request one have to agree to a verbal waiver. At my wedding, we had pre-mixed cocktails. Each one had a list of directions. Like the margarita was fill your cup with ice, then add the mix. My friend Margaret drank 2 pints, uniced, and told me they were a little strong. That was like the equivalent of 12 drinks. She blacked out shortly after. Ooh, I got a good one. When I was in middle school I got the nickname Knife Boy and got plastic knives banned at my school because I would collect like around 10 knives every day at school. And one day when the custodian caught me she had me dump everything I had in my large jacket pocket in the trash can. And the look on her face when the like 200th knife had fallen out and I had created an inch layer in the trash can was the absolute funniest thing I've ever seen. This is kinda a funny one. So on my old bus, I had to switch buses when going to a new school. There is this rule where you can't have your window all the way down. So one day, little ol' me forgot my phone at home and reading book at school. So I had nothing to do, right? When I had this brilliant idea, I thought it would be fun to stick my head out of the bus while it was in motion. Now, you may be like, OP, what's wrong with sticking your hand out of a bus? Hang on, I'm getting there. Now, keep in mind, it was pouring out. So when I was sticking my hand out of a bus maybe going 30-40 miles per hour, the rain pelted my hand like a BB gun. I didn't really mind the pain really, but that's not the end of the story. Okay, so little ol' me didn't know about a tree coming ahead, so I kept my hand out of the window. I only realized the tree when we were about 1 second away, so my hand scraped across the tree bark of the branches, so that hurt like a bee. Not to forget, but there were thorns on that tree. So when my hand scraped across the tree the thorns digged in my skin. When I brought my hand in, there were like 10-15 scratches on it, and they all were deep. I ended up fainting because I am sensitive to blood and I can't stand the sight of it, and there was a lot of it. When I woke up I was in my bed, with bandages on my hand. I guess I was out for a solid 7-9 hours. But yeah, that's my story. If anyone has been to Sainte Marie among the Hurons, I'm why there is a guard around the railing. Now I luckily don't remember this event, but here are the foggy details I remember. When I was 16 months old, my dad turned away for a split second and I, thinking the gap in the railing was stairs, went through. My dad just about caught me but I slipped through his hand. My brother saw me bounce on the stairs on my way down. I fell 1 story. I was violently throwing up. My dad got to me and was rushed to the hospital. Me and a man who came in with a heart attack basically shut down the emergency room since all staff were dealing with us. Then I was transferred to the closest children's hospital, the ambulance going as fast as it could down the highway. I was in a coma for days. Luckily, my skull was not fully formed at this time. If it was, I would likely have died on impact. I'm very lucky and this accident ended up saving my life, as during a follow-up they found a non-connected health problem that they were able to eventually treat. My old middle school can't have student-led plays anymore because my class got through one about Camp Morningwood with a chant and everything. You know those fundraisers at school where the students sell candy to raise money for their club? I offered a larger range of candy and would offer discounts near the end of the day to finish off the end of my stock. A trip to Sam's Club and I'd be ready for another go. I made about $100 with very little effort. Just carry a bag with me and people would hand me cash for a serving or 2 of candy. Next year, there was a rule made clearly at the beginning of the year. Only school clubs are allowed to sell candy at school. No firing signal flares. I accidentally set a guy on fire. We'd fire signal flares in the air to warn locals not to try speeding through our checkpoints. Well, pretty quickly everyone figured out that if you rush at the Marine checkpoint you get a free fireworks display. So locals started doing that sort of rim on your side of the line. Now I am on my side thing just to see us fire a signal flare. So I kinda pointed it in the guy's vague direction, 45-degree angle and offset like 10 feet. Which apparently was the perfect angle for range and windage because that sucker hit him dead center of the chest. His shirt burst into flames and he went home more or less fine, but his clothes were fricked. His beard was gone, and he had some minor, for the situation, burns. I got yelled at and they took the flare gun away, so all I had was regular bullets. Not exactly a rule, but in 2007 I managed, through persuasion and blatant trickery, to be voted best psychic by a local publication in my hometown, roughly 65,000 population. That publication removed the best psychic category from the contest for several years, as I recall. Never gave me my award, either, the bastards. In 8th grade, we also do a big trip down to the state capital to see the sights, and usually, the meal was at Golden Corral. When we arrived they let the buses off one at a time to go and take a table before we could get food. Well, me and my 3 friends' bus was called last, so we had to sit at the table behind the teachers' tables. Being at Golden Corral as a hungry 8th grade boy with high metabolism, what do? You pound as much food down as possible. After 5 plates, I lost count, and one of the teachers stood up and yelled at me for eating too much and how they weren't going to clean it up if I threw up, and on and on. I told her, I am not going to throw up and I will gladly clean it up. She told me that I couldn't get any more food. Little did she know though, that at that time, one of my friends was in line, getting me a full plate of mac and cheese, because I had gotten him some things earlier. She was not happy with that, but I still wasn't able to eat some that. I did not throw up on the way home, but they still made it the rule anyway, that the middle school was never going to back to Golden Corral, which really annoyed my younger siblings, who had to eat at Jimmy's John's, ordering small subs instead. A rule against changing into my gym uniform in a bathroom stall. I was bullied, and changing in front of the other girls was the worst. I was treated to a slew of insults about how disgusting my body was, so I changed in the bathroom stall throughout 6th grade. The gym teacher did nothing about the bullying but was heck bent on making it so I had to undress in front of the other girls. She did this by making fun of me in front of my co-ed gym class, putting up big signs in the locker room that everyone knew referred to me, and finally making it against the rules to change in a stall. I never understood why it was okay to force a kid to strip into their underwear in front of a room of people, but apparently it was. I understand it might have been a problem if every kid was changing in the stall, but after the first few weeks of school it was only me. I had been a teacher's pet when I was younger, but that was the year I stopped liking teachers. Most of my middle school teachers seemed to think the big perk of their job was making kids' lives miserable. That same teacher made fun of me as bad as any kid throughout PE class. My dad made a rule in Uno where we can't say Uno unless we only have one card because I would just yell Uno to confuse everyone. So now I just hide my cards from everyone to make them say it early. So, in my middle school when I was in 8th grade, nobody was allowed to use spray paint during the woodworking class. This was because I had used up a majority of the supply, which turned out to be about $300 worth. Because of the fact this supply of paint being donated to the school, they couldn't make me pay for it, so they made an all-out ban on it in the class. I'm still proud. When bottle flipping popularity reached its peak about 2 years ago, my friends and I would bring in more and more challenging bottles to flip before school started, and we wouldn't stop until we landed it at least once, or it was time to leave. One day, my friend brought in a full 2 liter of Cherry Crush, this detail important for later, and told us to flip it. After failing multiple times, because it was a full 2 liter, it exploded. It scared the crap out of the rest of the kids, and got all over everything. It stained the carpet, the table, the tile, and a part of the wall were forever sticky, and stained multiple white shirts. My friends and I got suspended for a week, and when we came back, bottle flipping was banned. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.